ever deny the greatness and impact that Beyonce has had throughout all of our lives. I guess being the biggest artist of any genre over the past 15 years isn't really a big deal. Neither is being in the most successful girl group of all time, having 6 multi-platinum solo albums, being married to the greatest rapper ever, being the sister of an artistic trendsetter and underground street fighter, singing at 2 presidential inaugurations, and starring in Carmen, a hip-hopera, isn't really that big of a deal. Anybody can do those things, right? But in all seriousness, Beyonce is an artist that comes once every lifetime. I can't say that she's the best at one thing, and I can name better singers, dancers, and musicians in their individual art form, but there's nobody that can do all those things on an exceptional level except Queen Bee. Many have tried, but none have really made it look so effortless and convincing altogether. She's the definition of a total package, and it's most evident in her albums. I've been asked by a few people to rank Beyonce's catalog, but deciding the order really hasn't been that easy. Of her 6 records, none of them are less than good. But damn it, I love all 30 of you guys that watch my content, so with that, here's a ranking of Beyonce's albums from worst to best. Quick disclaimer, I only cover the original releases, no deluxe editions. Why? Because deluxe editions are fucking cheating. I know I'm leaving out a lot of songs as a result, but first impressions are usually the most memorable. Also, no live album should go without saying. Sorry, Homecoming. And lastly, we won't cover Everything Is Love, cause this isn't ranking Beyonce albums in one collaboration album. Jay-Z's cool in my book though. With that out of the way, let's get it. Number 6, I Am Sasha Fierce. Now, I'll be completely honest, this was the album that officially made me a bona fide Beyonce fan.
I can feel your hello, hello, I can feel your hello, hello.
This is usually what people, Beehive or casual, will agree upon as her weakest effort. And in going back to it, I have to admit that they're right. Split in 2 parts, I Am and Sasha Fierce, the I Am side is pretty boring and dry at times, and drastically deviates away from what we had known Beyonce for up to that point. Songs like Broken Hearted Girl and Satellites are great songs, but they're not necessarily great Beyonce songs. The Sasha Fierce side can come off super try-hard, like she wants us to know how different she is. Radio and Videophone are pretty cringy at times and arguably some of her worst overall music. This album was pretty much carried by the Single Lady song and music video, the latter of which being the first time Beyonce broke the internet through multiple parodies and remakes. It was such a great song that Kanye West was willing to try to torpedo his career over it.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
That said, the song alone isn't the only gem here. Halo, Diva, and Sweet Dreams are all great records that endure almost 11 years later. While I Am Sasha Fierce is Beyonce's worst album, I'd argue that it may be her most important in regards to her musical growth. This is the first attempt at her stepping out of her comfort zone, and while it's not perfect, it's far from terrible. Without her beginning to stretch her artistic merits, I don't know if we get songs like 1+1, Pretty Hurts, and Sandcastles down the line. And if we do, I don't know if they'd be accepted as well as they are now. Number 5, Dangerously in Love. You cannot ask for a better debut album. This here is just good quality R&B through and through. After tearing it up with Destiny's Child for a couple of years, Beyonce announced that she was going solo. And while it didn't start out so great, she quickly recovered with Crazy in Love. You could say after that legendary uh-oh dance, the rest was pretty much history. So many great singles like Baby Boy, Naughty Girl, and the real nigga anthem, Me, Myself, and I. So many great album cuts like Yes, Signs, and Speechless. This was amazing music in 2003. But even with all that going for it, this is easily Beyonce's safest album. There aren't that many risks, and in some respects, it could be mistaken as a Destiny's Child album without Kelly and Michelle. She hadn't quite found her voice and identity on her own, which is completely understandable. This was her first effort. Songs like Hip-Hopera and That's How You Like It are forgettable at best, and while I like The Closer I Get to You with Luther Vandross, it feels a little bit out of place compared to the youthful sounds of everything else here. Speaking of Beyonce and Luther Vandross,
Beyonce. You know who you really look like? You fucking look like Luther Vandross.
still, this album is a great view into what Beyonce could and ultimately would become. Side note, Daddy is a creepy fucking song. Number 4, Beyonce. On a cold, quiet, and peaceful day in 2013, Beyonce put a shock to the entire Universe's system and dropped her self-titled 5th album. No announcement, no promotion, no singles, just here, bitch. Take it and like that shit. No exaggeration, the whole world stopped and the internet broke. A cultural moment that had never been done before and hasn't been duplicated on the same level since. Kinda like Where Were You When 9/11 happened, only with no tragedy or death. Just all of our hairlines pushed back. When you dive into it, the music doesn't disappoint either. Drunken Love, Blow, No Angel, and Partition are absolutely great songs with many layers. Sonically, thematically, vocally, the textures are all there. And it's the first time we get to hear intimate details about Beyonce's personal life. From her marriage, to her unfortunate miscarriage, to the birth of her first daughter. It lived up to the hype. But when the initial excitement wears off, for me it took about 3 or 4 years, it's hard to not see that at times the album feels a bit overly drawn out. Even with songs that I love, there are a few times that I say to myself, this could be way shorter and give me the same message and sound. Why is this so long? Songs like Rocket and Mine immediately come to mind. If this issue were a little more tame, it would probably be a lot higher. But Self-Titled is undeniably a classic for its impact and effect that it had on the world and the music industry's release structure. Number 3, 4. If this was a list of my favorite Beyonce albums, this would easily be number 1. And if I had to look back, this was her first album that was undisputed by the public as being really good. The fact that the album leaked a few weeks before its release hurt its initial impact, and as a result, I debated heavily between this album and Self-Titled for number 3. But while the initial impact for 4 is much lower compared to Beyonce, what puts this album over is how comparatively cohesive it is as opposed to Self-Titled sounding like a hodgepodge of really good songs being thrown together. 2011 was a real down period in R&B overall, and there weren't any real new stars being made, and only a few established acts were pushing boundaries. This album came along and changed a lot. What I love about For the Most is how vocally diverse it is compared to her earlier work. It felt like she came in and said, I'ma show you bitches I know how to sing for real. Don't get it twisted. And she delivered. 1+1, I Miss You, Party, Rather Die Young, Love on Top, End of Time, so much amazing quality and technique in every single song. Yeah, Run the World was on this album too, but literally everything else is unskippable. Aside from Chris Brown with Fame and Rihanna with Talk That Talk, the market and lane was pretty much open in R&B, and man did Beyonce and this album run everybody off the road. If somebody comes to you complaining about how Beyonce's overrated, play them this. If they still don't give her credit, they're fucking haters and don't want to be happy. Number 2, Lemonade. So we're into 2016. Beyonce has basically cemented herself as a bona fide icon that can never be overcome. So she asked herself, what can I do to further my undefeated streak? And she said to herself, I'm gonna drop an album, make a movie for it, and get me and my husband this bag by making it exclusive on his streaming service. The ending result was the concept album Lemonade. Beyonce's most expansive and genre-bending piece of music to date. With so many sounds coming together like R&B, hip-hop, rock, country, and even electro, you would expect it to be a mess, right? But it blends together a lot better than you'd ever think. Lemonade and 4 are pretty similar in terms of story. A heartbreaking woman leaves her lover to be single and she ends up back with them in the end. The difference being that while 4 is more focused on being heartbroken about it, Lemonade is full of aggression and presents a stronger message of finding who you are and not letting anyone get in the way of that. Consider this to be Beyonce in her final form of her musical evolution. 4 was Charmander with great music but a smaller impact. Self-Titled was Charmeleon, crazy impact but imperfect music. Lemonade was Charizard. She did everything right and every song is quality. Hold Up, Don't Hurt Yourself, Sorry, Love Drought, Freedom, All Night, and for all the dislike that it gets, I loves me some sad-ass sandcastles. There's so much about this record to enjoy. This album was so good. Adele had to publicly admit she didn't deserve Album of the Year over it at the Grammy Awards. You can't deny its greatness visually, musically, and longevity isn't even a question. Beyonce fired on all cylinders and delivered a legendary project. But with that, there's one album that's a little better. Number 1 best Beyonce album of all time is B-Day. You want to talk about a project with consistent bops throughout. An album that steps on your nuts and doesn't let up until one of them pops. Look no further than this 2006 masterpiece. Beyonce went into this with little direction besides making good tracks and walked out with 10 songs 2 weeks later. Initially it may come off as disjointed, but what put this over the top is that the music is at such a high level the entire way through. Almost every single record is within her immediate catalog that we all know and love. Deja Vu, Gimme Body, Sugar Mama, Ring the Alarm, Kitty Cat, Freakum Dress, Green Light, Irreplaceable, Upgrade You. All these songs were made for this album. To put it in perspective, look at it like this. Michael Jackson released Off the Wall in 1979. It's an amazing body of work and undeniably timeless, but it only received 1 Grammy Award the following year, and he hadn't quite found his personal footing sonically. When Michael Jackson released Thriller in 1982, every single did massive numbers and he took away a record 8 Grammys at the 1984 ceremony. That album gave us The Glove, The Moonwalk, and The Monkey. You can look at it the same way through the lens of Dangerously in Love and B-Day. Dangerously in Love is wonderful, but the level of identity that Beyonce would adopt later wasn't quite there. On B-Day, there was no shadow of doubt of who Beyonce's sound was or its persona. A bad bitch that can do any and everything she wants because she's that damn good. This album solidified who she was and contained every element that makes us collectively love her. Empowering lyrics, solid vocals, hard production, sexy and unique visuals. How could anybody compete that year? You couldn't! And for that, B-Day is Beyonce's best album. Do you agree with my list? How would you rank Beyonce's albums? Let me know in the comment section. Be sure to subscribe to my mama's garage. I'm Calvin and I'll see you next time.